Hey guys, welcome to another huge episode of Triggered. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to break it up a little bit. We actually have two guests. It's not going to just be one-on-one, but both are incredible America First candidates who are going to be on the ballot in 2024. Ohio Senate candidate Bernie Moreno and West Virginia gubernatorial candidate Attorney General Patrick Morrisey will join us to lay out what's at stake in 2024 and why they're on a mission to support my father and this incredible America First MAGA movement. These are important races. We've seen just how important, obviously, the Senate is, but also in the last few years, I think we've recognized the importance of just how much the gubernatorial races matter in terms of our freedoms, in terms of our businesses, etc. So these are going to be important races that we need to win, and we need top candidates to get the job done. Throughout 2024, we'll be spotlighting the best America First candidates in key races throughout the country. So you guys got to pay attention, learn up, read up on the candidates. That's the reality. So many of these guys do amazing things, but they may not be either, national news, that you may not know who's who. You got plenty of candidates running around there sort of pretending to be America First. So we're going to make sure you know the difference. You know who's who and what they really stand for. So guys, make sure you're also liking, sharing, and subscribing so you never miss one of these interviews, okay? You can catch them also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts after they air here on Rumble so that, if you're traveling, if you're on the road, if you're in your car, if you're commuting to work, if you're whatever it may be, you can catch the episodes. If you're not able to catch them, at your desktop or on your phone, you can just listen in and probably get just as much of the experience. So check that out. Make sure you do it because it's all of you guys who make all of this possible, along with some of our incredible sponsors. So guys, make sure to check out the great folks over at Goldco. We've seen it every day. Interest rates are rising. Of course, we're seeing the inflation, the reckless spending, the global turmoil, the Biden-caused disasters every day, and it's only leading to more economic anxiety. I simply want you to be prepared for that. Okay, owning tangible physical inflation hedging gold and silver can help secure and ultimately stabilize your portfolio. Goldco has top-notch customer service. They'll answer all of your questions, and they'll walk you through the process step by step so that you can educate yourself, inform yourself, and make the right decision for you and your family and their financial well-being. So go to donjuniorgold.com to learn more. That's donjuniorgold.com. You can, again, read about it, learn about it. They'll walk you through it each and every step of the process. But we see what's going on right now, and it definitely seems like a very secure hedge. That's donjuniorgold.com. Check them out. And with that, we'll be going to Bernie Moreno. Well, guys, with that, we have my good friend, Bernie Moreno of Ohio. Bernie's running for Senate. Definitely the America First candidate in the race. Incredible real-world experience, the kind of thing we're looking for and actually want in the United States Senate. Not a perpetual bureaucrat, but an incredible businessman, car dealerships, everything, incredible life story. Really brings something unique to the ticket. So, Bernie, thanks so much for being on the program.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
You too, my friend. You too. So we're seeing the devastating consequences of an open border every day. Every state is now a border state, including your state of Ohio. How is it affecting you guys there? I mean, I feel like people talk about that as like a soundbite, but it's real. Whether it's the human trafficking, whether it's fentanyl, probably the number one cause as it relates to the spread throughout the country. What's going on there? You've been really vocal about it. So do people fully get it, or are they not yet woken up to just how bad this crisis actually is?
Oh, no, they absolutely have. 8.5 million people in 3 years. They're spread all over the country. We have places like Springfield, Ohio, small little town. 20% of the healthcare in that little town is devoted to illegal immigrants right now. It's completely breaking their system. We had a situation in Greene County, small little rural area of Ohio, where a bus of kids was driving to school in the morning. You can relate to this, having little ones. Yep. And a drunk driver hits that school bus, kills a 12-year-old. That drunk driver was an illegal immigrant. We're seeing communities like in Dublin, Ohio, where we have 400 or 500 illegal immigrants housed in apartment complexes, filling those school systems. The teachers are having to teach in 4 or 5 different languages. The parents are complaining that the female teachers are not allowed to reprimand the male boy students because in the Muslim culture, you're not allowed to do that. This is the impact of a wide open border. As somebody who came here legally to this country with my 5 brothers, my sister, my mom and dad, it's disgusting to see American leaders allow this to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously, your friend and colleague in the United States Senate, I think if you get in there, you know, Ohio's going to have clearly the most based Senate team in the world with you and J.D. Vance. But, you know, you talk about it a lot. You see those things. I hear the stories. I mean, you know, friends in New York, they're like, well, my kid has to learn in Spanish 2 days a week. And I don't mean Spanish class. I mean, history is taught in Spanish 2 days a week, and the kid doesn't speak Spanish. It shouldn't be a prerequisite to learn in American public schools in Spanish. And I mean, if you're bilingual, that's great. I'm bilingual. I believe you're bilingual. I mean, you come from Latin culture. Your family is, and you have a great immigrant story that way as a family. But you know. How is it that this is going on? Who is saying something about it? I mean, is anyone? Because you know, obviously JD's vocal, you're vocal. Why is the rest of the Senate so quiet?
Well, you know, Don, the problem is a lot of these guys are cowards. They're so afraid of a negative news story. They're afraid of being called a racist, a xenophobe. That's a requisite of being a conservative Republican in today's environment. No matter what you do, they're going to call you that. In my situation, I came to the U.S. about 52 years ago, just before my 5th birthday. I didn't speak a word of English. Here's the difference. My mom put me in school and said, you better learn the language. You better understand American history. You better master the language. And that's what we did. That's what immigrants do that want to come here and appreciate this country. We want to be a multi-ethnic country, but we're not ever designed to be a multicultural country. There's one culture, which is American culture, and it's on immigrants to assimilate with that culture. The problem we have is on the Republican side, if you say that, again, you're so afraid of the New York Times or CNN or, heaven forbid, George Stephanopoulos saying something bad about you that you're just silent. And that's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping we're at a break point, right, where the insanity of speaking just the truth, that people are fed up of just that. You're right. You know, if you say something that's obvious, it's racist. It's misogynistic. It's the easy button of the political left today, just to call everything one of the ists, even if it's just common sense, which is totally lacking. Do you think we're breaking through with that? I do see more people sort of willing to say these things out loud. You see it on social media. I think, perhaps, on X, some of the stuff being, a little bit lifted. It's not quite as heavily censored. If someone was talking common sense and it was gaining traction, all of a sudden the algorithm shuts it down. Do you think that the regular people are actually seeing that message? Do you think that they are becoming unafraid? Because I think that's what it's going to take. It's not just you or me and a handful of us who are willing to say these things, and they can quietly sort of nod along in the background as long as they're not being recorded or are live. But do you think regular people, understanding there's a consequence, there's much more of a consequence if we don't get more vocal in the future, in my opinion, but do you think that they too are now actually starting to be willing to actually engage in that battle?
Oh, absolutely. I think people are definitely opening up to the idea that they have to use their voice. Free speech is obviously the cornerstone of democracy. The challenge we have is, who are the leaders? Who are the big company leaders? They're afraid of the marketing department, the HR department, but you're starting to see that change a little bit and too slowly. The people who are on the boards of trustees of colleges and universities need to speak up. For the most part, they've been very silent, allowing these college presidents who are complete radical lunatics. There's an idea that the left has that they've infiltrated from the groundwater, from the bottom up. As Republicans, we've tried to skim the surface to make change. We got to go down deep also and make institutional changes by being vocal, by getting involved. It's not the comfortable thing to do. You know that. You guys had a great life. You had a great life.
I assure you, it was much easier being a real estate, the son of a billionaire real estate developer from New York and doing these things. Now you engage in this battle, but But that's the point. We don't have a choice, right? You're 100% right. I mean, you saw, I spoke about it a lot on this show, a couple of weeks ago with what was going on at Harvard and all of these things. And, the board, we unanimously stand beside someone who plagiarized and did all of this stuff. We're going to stand. I'm like, wait a minute. So an issue that would have thrown out any other Claudine Gay is she's a scholar's scholar. We're not really sure why or why, it doesn't really matter. It's all bullshit. But, we're going to say that because we have to, because that whole ESG house of cards, and that's all it is. I mean, if there's actual accountability and you realize it's all nonsense and you realize that the pillars of that privilege, really, who've manipulated that system the most are at the top of that food chain. Once you realize that's all a lie, you realize just how much worse the rest of it is. And so, it is an issue that's on the top of the minds of voters. You see the madness in higher education, and even at Ohio State, right? There was apparently a health course which requires students to address their white heterosexual privileges. Now, again, if I was applying to college today as a white heterosexual, I think if I had the choice to identify as anything but, it would actually be, that would be true privilege. Applying as a white heterosexual, probably not so much. But what does that even mean? And, how do we stop the indoctrination inside the universities, right? You've been able to do that. You see it a little bit on business. You see some of the cancellations that have been effective. They come back around and sponsor, Bud Light with the UFC. They come back now. Not only do they sort of stop the nonsense, but they come back and sponsor a company that's been sort of, let's call it vocally conservative. How do you do that and accomplish that inside our universities?
Well, it's a few things. So number one, we got to abolish the Department of Education. A lot of the core problems, not just in colleges, but K through 12 happen there. I'm confident that when we take office in 2025, we can make that happen. That does a twofer. It puts parents back in charge. It also ends the money laundering operation that is these teachers unions. Yeah. I think the second thing we got to do is we have to take a really hard look at Pell Grant eligibility. We're paying, taxpayers are paying for these kids to go to places like Harvard that are indoctrinating them on hating America, being taught that there's something wrong with them if they're white, there's something wrong with them if they're black. And in my son's case, Don, you won't believe this, 3 days before school starts for him in college, he gets a letter saying, hey, we see you're Hispanic. By the way, he's a great student, great kid. We see you're Hispanic, so we have special counseling and tutoring available for you. So right off the bat, making him think because his dad was born in South America, somehow he must be stupid, right? That is the most demeaning thing possible. So we have to look at their Pell Grant eligibility, their nonprofit status, their federal grant eligibility, because the only thing these colleges and universities will understand is when we hit them in the pocketbook and make them act. It's the only way to fix it.
Yeah, and really the value proposition in general, with pushing people who couldn't otherwise, not everyone's going to be a physicist, right? But, you're going to get a gender studies degree and you're going to rack up $350,000 in debt. Then you're going to ask the plumber who's making six figures working his ass off, who never took any of those things, did it responsibly, runs a small business. You're going to ask him to then subsidize your worthless education that was never going to pay for itself, ever. Like, it doesn't check out. I mean, that to me seems to be a component of this as well, right? If someone wants to get an education, great. But, if you're going to get an education and rack up those kind of fees for something that literally on paper could never pay back, there's no money in it whatsoever. There's no, I imagine most of those graduates couldn't even tell you what they actually learned, but, they've got a PhD in gender studies and contribute absolutely nothing to society.
Well, they can tell you that there's 72 genders. That's all they're able to do.
Bernie. There's 4,976 as of the start of this interview. And we've been going for 15 minutes or so, so there's probably 7 or 8 more that have manifested itself since then. But yes.
They're going to use the whole alphabet soon. Yeah, the entire alphabet will start rapping. It'll be double Z at the end. But the reality is, I think that's part of what's changing is parents are looking at it saying, what's the value proposition to send my kid to college? Like you said, if you want to be a doctor or be a vet like my son is, if you want to be a lawyer, of course, you're going to go to higher ed. But the reality is, what is being a gender studies major, a pottery major, what does that really do for you when you can you can have a great job with a trade that makes you good money, where you can raise a family, take care of your kids, and not have to have gone to college? So we have to destigmatize that. And we also have to pour a lot more money and a lot more support towards these trade schools that actually have a much bigger impact in our economy.
Yeah. Well, and listen, I think that stigmatization, you're 100% right, though I think people are waking up. They're realizing just how incompetent these universities are. I mean, as a graduate of Penn, that, being one of those schools kind of caught up in that scandal. It's like, I think, I speak to people every day like, hey man, I would have always hired Harvard people, but now, honestly, it's not worth the added drama of whatever I've got to have HR deal with because they think they're special and they don't have to work the same as everyone else. And when in fact they're not. And so, but yeah, hopefully that house of cards is coming down, and I think it's so important, and people are starting to get it. But talk to me, as a businessman, you have a background in business. You got into the auto industry in America, sort of a foundational industry in sort of, let's call it American industrialism. What drew you there? But what policies do you think would also help bring back auto manufacturing? I mean, I watch the Auto Workers Union, and they've been bought and paid for by, the Democrat Party for decades, and it doesn't line up with the actual policies, I think, of the actual auto workers. There's a difference between union leadership and the workers, just like there's a difference between FBI leadership and the door kickers, military leadership and the operators. Those things are very different. What can we do to fix, auto manufacturing in the United States right now?
Well, just to give you a stat to start the conversation, back in the day, General Motors alone was 7% of the gross domestic product of this country, just one company. So the auto industry is huge, amazing here in Ohio, where a lot of our tier one suppliers are based. What we're doing right now is pushing the car business off the cliff. We're handing it over to China. Previously, because of terrible trade deals, we handed our auto industry over to Mexico. They took about a third of our auto industry there. The way we bring it back here is we get rid of all these EV mandates, all these EV incentives, freeze CAFE, which is the fuel economy standards for a decade, not allow states like California to mandate a specific fuel economy standard. That's a violation of the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Constitution. And then we have to make certain that we have a good workforce, which is really the conversation we just had, that we can have the right worker in place when we bring that industry back, have low, expensive energy, abundant energy, reliable energy. That means oil, that means gas, that means coal, because you can't run an auto plant on solar panels and windmills. It's just stupid. Yeah. So those are the things we got to do, and just have good policies around that. And we can and have to do that because the auto industry is so critical. What's interesting, though, Don, is the left wants the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. They want us to ride a scooter to work, take public transportation. They're trying to get rid of the auto industry generally. And they know that electric cars are totally unsustainable. They're happy with that. They want to reduce the amount of private ownership of cars. That would be devastating to our economy and a handover of a critical industry to China.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was interesting, right? I was watching, the president of the auto worker, they're meeting with Biden and they're supporting him. And I'm like, wait a minute, like they're also supporting literally, and I'm watching some of these auto workers. Some of them look like they're in a hostage video, right? They don't really want to be there, but they're forced to be there. But, that's part of their, but, they're paying dues into a system that is literally funding and advocating for EVs that they're not able to actually make there. So I'm like, you're an auto worker who's paying into a system that's basically going to raise money to send to China to have them produce the lithium ion batteries to make your job obsolete. I don't understand. And it's like, I don't even know that they understand that this is going on, but they're literally funding their own demise in this process. To me, it seems. I mean, maybe I'm off, but I mean, you know this industry better than anyone.
Oh, no, 100%. Because again, you need 30% less workers to make an electric car. The technology is mostly owned by a company called CATL, C-A-T-L, Corporate Amperex Technologies. That's a Chinese Communist Party owned company. Today, we're paying for that company to build battery plants here in America at our expense, subsidized massively by the U.S. taxpayer, which is totally and completely insane. They own the lithium supply, the nickel supply. We are the world leaders in internal combustion engines. Here in Ohio, we make more internal combustion engines than any other state in the country. So you can imagine a leadership in DC saying, hey, we're not going to make what you make really well anymore. and do it in a very condensed period of time. And by the way, here's the punchline, and have consumers who don't want to do that, force them to do it, and with an electrical grid that can't handle it. So I used to think that COVID shutdowns were the worst public policy in American history, but this move to EV mandates is getting right up there with it.
Interesting. So, let's talk a little bit about Ohio, right? I was on the ground earlier this year in East Palestine following the toxic train derailment. I was there with JD. I know you've been there. What's it like there right now? I think it was a sort of an important moment. I think it was actually, much more so than the indictments and this as a sort of a wake-up call to the American people about the Democrats. When Joe Biden couldn't be bothered to go there, but he'll go for the Zelensky photo op, and Pete Buttigieg, reluctantly shows up the day after, he's in his work boots, brand new, never been worn, or worked in for sure. But, there for the photo op, like we're actually doing something. I think it's so important that we don't forget those American communities. And I think that was a big wake-up call to the American public. What's going on there right now? I mean, are they being taken care of? We got to fight for America. And it feels like everyone's so worried about spending money, whether it's other people's borders or other people's pensions in Ukraine, rather than worrying about, the liabilities and the disasters that we face here right at home with our own citizenry.
Ultimately, that's the exact question in this campaign is, do we have leaders in Washington, D.C. that are going to put America first? That's really the question, which seems obvious. But if you look back at the last 10, 20, 30 years, the reality is we've had leaders in Washington, D.C. that put America last. And that moment, that rainy day when President Trump came in, when you came in with JD, and you had virtually the entire town lined up on a cold, rainy day to greet President Trump, was a masterclass in what America First really meant. He really delivered to those people an uplifting message that we care about you. Now, what was the president of the United States doing at the time? He's in Ukraine on President's Day and not in East Palestine. It's not a mistake. This is exactly how DC thinks. They don't give a crap about white working class Americans. In fact, they think they're stupid. They demean them. They think they're trash, deplorables, whatever you want to call it. Yep. And there's President Trump buying McDonald's for people in East Palestine. And there's Joe Biden in Ukraine handing over billions and billions of dollars to a corrupt country to fund an endless war. There could not be a better moment. I think history will take that clip and say, this is what the America First movement was all about back in 2023 when it happened. That was a moment.
I think it was incredible just watching it and seeing it. And you're right, the whole town turned up. I mean, the mayor then later on, I know I did one of your guys' Reagan Day dinners with you up there in Ohio afterwards. And, the mayor of the town came in and was like, we need Trump back. But yeah, it's one of those, we have to wake up to when someone tells you who they are, and in this case, really the Democrat Party, when they tell you who they are, believe them. They're telling you, they're showing you each and every day, right? They want, more, and this, by the way, includes many of the Rhino Republicans, both in Congress and the Senate, as well as some of your competitors in Ohio, for the Republican primary Senate race. We believe them when they tell you who they are. They say it often. They don't pretend. They get on TV and often say other things, but their actions really tell you exactly, where they are and where they stand.
Yeah, in the case of Matt Dolan, who, by the way, said he wasn't sure if he would support President Trump if he's the nominee. I wrote an op-ed that said that should be a disqualifying event. Because if you're running for the United States Senate, Ohio, and you're not sure if you're going to support the Republican nominee, don't run as a Republican. But he's a guy that has said, listen to this, Don. He said that if we really want to balance the budget in D.C., the only way to do it is to cut Social Security. At the same time,
the one, let's call it entitlement. I don't even think it's an entitlement because it's not an entitlement if you pay into something for your whole life, right? You know, that's the one we actually have to save. You know, I see it come out of my checks. I see it come out of my employees' checks. I see it's going into a system, and now we want to bring other people into the country. Well, we'll give them free education, free healthcare, free this, but no. The one person, all the people that paid into a system, those are going to be the ones that are screwed. And that's like the America Last policy that we see every day. I mean, you know, Matt Dolan has other problems. I mean, if you're going to change the name of the Cleveland Indians to capitulate to, like, you know, the woke warfare, you know, that just makes you a weak, like, you just don't belong on a world stage. What a weakling. So, you know, that he would have lost me at that, but the rest of the comments only further the point that, yeah, listen, maybe he should run as a Democrat because he's clearly a Democrat, not a Republican.
Well, that's the point. So he's willing to cut Social Security, but in the same breath, he says, we got to give hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine to pay for the salaries and pensions of Ukrainians.
Yeah, the pensions. Just so we're clear, because I said it earlier, I didn't even know we were going there with Dolan because I didn't realize he went that far. I mean, that shows you how insane it is. But, like, you know, Zelensky, you must stop funding your roads, your schools, your bridges, and send us missiles and pay for the pensions of our people. I'm like, wait. Like, we can't, like, unfunded pension liability is $1 trillion problem America has not even begun to deal with, right? And yet, we're going to fund their pensions, but Republicans running for office want to cut Social Security. I mean, that's how insane we are. That's how backwards this is. We're going to cover their pensions, their effectively Social Security, but not our own. It's America Last.
Well, and of course, we know the answers, by the way. We're not really covering their pensions. All that money is being laundered, God knows to whom and how. But the mentality is what's broken in DC. This idea that you go to voters and you get their support because you tell them one thing, knowing that you're going to go to DC and do something completely different and screw them over. And you're perfectly happy doing that because, Don, here's the thing. I think they fundamentally hate average Americans. I think they look down on them. I think that's what's different about your family and what I did is in my business, like in yours, you valued that frontline employee because you knew that was the face of your business. So you took really good care of them. I seen that with your father in Mar-a-Lago. There'll be billionaires having dinner. Who does he talk to? He talks to the waiter, talks to the hostess, greets them by first name because we really care about working class Americans. These elitist Republicans, obviously Democrats, they look down on it. They look and go, you're just a truck driver. Like in my case, in my race, both of my opponents had said, hey, Bernie's just a used car salesman. Okay. I'll take that, right? Yeah, I built 15 dealerships, called me a used car salesman. But you know what? A used car salesman wakes up every day and knows that if he doesn't perform by the end of the day, he can't feed his family. A career politician doesn't have to do anything, can fail all day, and will still get paid by the taxpayer. So yes, I will take the honor of being called the used car salesman. But it's another way that they look down on working class Americans. That's the problem. We're battling between elites and everybody else.
And the elites are not that like they honestly, again, the last month has sort of been perfect in cutting down this notion of, you know, of the elites, you know, the elite scholar. Like, well, what's so elite about them? You know, where you realize, oh, they got there because they cheated or they checked some boxes or they did whatever. Like, they couldn't take care of themselves. Like the reality, they're only propped up by an artificial system that's been subsidized to death with this nonsense. So, you know, it's awesome to see all of that coming down. And I love that you're calling it out. I mean, I know, you know, in the last cycle, you know, I went hard for JD and he's the guy in the Senate right now doing that. You guys as a team there would be epic because we have way too many weaklings there. And some of them, you know, they'll tell me in private they agree with it. We're just not willing to break the rules and the norms of the Senate. I'm like, man, I wish you guys fought just once like a Democrat would, and we'd actually get something done. But, you know, earlier, you know, in your campaign, you released a 5-point plan to stop the weaponization of justice, so we can actually focus on prosecuting like criminals. I know that's shocking. I know that's, you know, an incredible outlier in America today, but can you lay out that plan? Because I think it's important for people to understand these details because they see it too. They see what's going on. You know, it's not just, you know, censorship on Facebook. They have friends that, you know, are getting door knocked by the FBI because they were within 1,500 miles of Washington, D.C. on, you know, the fake fake insurrection January 6th, the first unarmed insurrection in the history of eternity. Can you lay out that plan a little bit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. But before I do, let me just say I read another article this weekend about the New York case and what that absolute lunatic judge is doing to your family. I'm telling you, for hours I was ranting about that article. It is the American public needs to wake up and understand what is happening in that particular case with your family and your family business. Because whether you're a fan, not a fan, or Democrat or Republican, it does not matter. What is being allowed to have happen in that case in New York is so insane. It is something that would be outrageous in South American dictatorships.
Yeah.
What is happening there?
I'm not allowed to talk about it because I'm under gag order, Bernie, which in and of itself tells you probably everything you need to know. Imagine not being able to speak about these things to the extent of it. But as a business guy, you understand it, and they run out there with these things, and the supposed victim is like, no, they were our greatest, like one of our greatest partners. We wanted to do more business with them, not less. We didn't lose a cent. Every payment was made. It doesn't matter. This is what we feel. You were the victim. No, but we're not. We're saying we're not. We're on the stand. It doesn't matter. We're ignoring all of that. It doesn't matter what you say under oath on the stand. You're right. It's almost it's a caricature, like an insane caricature of a Latin American dictatorship.
Well, and it's for those of us who own businesses, it is incredibly chilling to know that we have a system of government that would allow a rogue judge, a rogue prosecutor to inflict that kind of pain and punishment on an innocent company, innocent people, because it's not just, they're not going to stop at just you. The ability that they have this weapon, they can use it against all of us. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hopeful that the Supreme Court, when they hear that case, has to be a strong rebuttal of what's going on. And we have to figure out how to have a judge like that is persecuting somebody have some consequences, because the idea that they're doing is nuts. But back to my plan, I think what we have to do is we have to impeach Joe Biden. I think that's important because we need to know what's out there. We need to understand the communications between him and Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray. So I think those two also should be impeached, because we're not gonna remove them from office, but we'll find out what really happened so that we can get the receipts, have the transparency so that the American public see what happens. I support what JD's doing, which is no more promotions for these Department of Justice people that are weaponizing the justice system. We have to make certain that we take away the money, taxpayer money that's being used to fund these persecutions. And then finally, I believe we should pause all judges, appointments of federal judges, because what Biden's going to do over the next 12 months is put in the most radical federal judges possible. And so we have to put a pause on all that until the next election, because they're going to put these and once they're in there for life. And again, the New York case and others, you can see what these judges are able to do. So those 5 things, I think, are imperatives. We have to have a blind justice system in America, or this country as we know it does not exist.
Yeah, no, they always try to do that. Well, you propose conservative justice. But when the issue is close, or it goes like, the conservative justices are the only ones that actually ever give the other side wins, right? There's never been a liberal justice that actually sides with the conservatives on something that's not just a flagrant thing. When it is an issue that is political, the conservative justice, no, constitutionally speaking, this is a little bit more right, so they give them the win each and every time. So, we're as always, we're playing different games. But a big one I see, really with Washington Republicans is they're out there, and you've been very vocal on this, so it's important, I think, people that hear this. You see Washington Republicans holding hearings and paying lip service to the intelligence abuses that, we've witnessed over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. But then they also vote to fund a new FBI headquarters. They vote to reauthorize FISA, not just components of it that lets you spy on your enemies abroad, but actually continue the abuse against, the American citizens who they've called, domestic terrorists for being Catholic, who they've called domestic terrorists for being, concerned parents at PTA meetings. And I'm sure there's other things that we haven't even been told yet. Who's a domestic terrorist? I know, I'm on that list, or all of them. Talk about that disconnect and how you'd be voting in the United States Senate. What can you do to change some of that and get the others, to, hold them to task?
Well, Senator Mike Lee has been great on this issue. I mean,
He
he's
has been
a brilliant constitutional expert, proud to have his endorsement. The fact that we reauthorize FISA the way to bring an election year. Did we not learn anything from 2020 or 2022? My God, it's insane, right? The Russia collusion hoax, right? What did that happen? Through the FISA courts. The reality is the Patriot Act was something that came out of 9/11, as you know, certainly seemed like something that was necessary because we were under attack. Here we are 20 plus years later. What could go wrong? Well, we know it could go wrong when we have bureaucrats and administrative state, the deep state, that has weaponized the power, the awesome power of the federal government against ordinary citizens. We either need to massively restructure that program or completely just repeal it. I think there's been hundreds of thousands of spying incidents on Americans, and yet you never hear it. You never hear a whisper about it. What I get frustrated about, Don, is we have Republicans. They all campaign on the same issues. There's not going to be one Republican that comes on your show or any other conservative show that has a different issue set. Here's the difference. When they get elected, what happens to these guys? Why do they all of a sudden cave? And the answer, in my mind, is because what they care about more than anything else is getting reelected, being popular with the media, figuring out what's next for them. They got to be the moderate so they can get that big board of directors seat when they retire. This is what's wrong with this system. We have to change the people we send to DC, or we'll never, ever fix it.
So talk about that a little bit. How's this campaign going? Obviously you have my father's endorsement. You have our good friend J.D. Vance, and you're running against two rhinos. We discussed one of them already with Dolan. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. Talk about perhaps the other candidates in there and what makes you the America first choice in that race. What makes you different than the opponents?
Well, Dolan is a hardcore left of center. I would call him super rhino, not even rhino, super rhino. Think Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney had a child, it would be Matt Dolan, right? And then on the other side, you have Frank LaRose.
That's a terrible visual. I may not be able to unsee that for a couple of weeks, Bernie, but yes, it's also effective.
That's how bad it is, by the way. On the other side, you have Frank LaRose, who not too long ago described himself as a pragmatic, moderate, was a no labels guy. Then all of a sudden, he decides he wants to run for Senate. He thinks that DeSantis is the way to go. So early this year, he's playing footsies with DeSantis, introduces him at the Summit County Lincoln Day dinner, lunch, like what you did, saying, they have so much in common. All of a sudden launches his campaign, says, hey, Trump's endorsement doesn't matter at all. It's not what it used to be. People don't really care. Of course, then they show him a poll. And then all of a sudden, wait, what do you mean? I love President Trump. He's my best friend. I've been with him since day one. And says the endorsement is decisive. He doesn't know what he wants to be, but in reality is he knows what he wants to be when he grows up, which is he has this idea probably of being president of the United States, but he doesn't know who he wants to be. He doesn't know what he actually believes because he believes in whatever advances his career. Yeah. He is the perfect embodiment of what's wrong with DC. Somebody who only cares about their next election, their next position. They probably played with the White House Lego set too much when they were kids and are convinced that they're going to be a president of the United States someday. And so will sell out anyone or anything to get power. That's the last person that should be anywhere near Washington, D.C. That's the contrast that we're drawing in this campaign. And so far, we've racked up the endorsements, not just nationally, like, of course, President Trump and JD and others, but locally. So we have over 525 local endorsements from people in Ohio, more than the other two combined. We've raised many more times, multiples from them fundraising wise, and we've got the grassroots organization. So what I hear over and over again, it's very simple. No more corruptions. We want outsiders to go to DC who are actually there. You're going to have to sit down for this one to do the things that we campaign on.
Well, I really appreciate that you're doing this, man. I wish you all the luck with it. Let me know what more I can do to help. Look forward to seeing you over there in Ohio. And guys who are watching, check out Bernie, go check out his campaign website. If you're in Ohio, see what you can do to help. This is going to be one of the big, honestly, there's not that many Senate races that we can move a needle here. This is a really big one. We got to win it, and we need to send someone else like Bernie to the United States Senate to represent us in Washington, D.C., because God knows the Senate is, let's call it, lacking, and maybe lacking at best. So, Bernie, thank you so much for that, man. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys are all doing well, and look forward to seeing more soon.
Perfect. Absolutely. Whenever you want to come back to Ohio, they love you here. We love a lot. We love you here in Ohio. So we'd love to have you come back up whenever you want.
We'll do it, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Well, Bernie, thank you so much. And in a few moments, guys, West Virginia gubernatorial candidate, current State Attorney General Patrick Morrisey will be here. Okay. He'll be joining us. But I also want to introduce you guys to one of our newest sponsors, the Wellness Company, a leader in providing emergency medical kits. With almost 90% of our pharmaceuticals being produced outside of the U.S., mostly in China, make sure that you have what your family needs when the next crisis hits, guys. Like we saw with COVID, supply chain chaos, lockdowns, Fauci failures, call it whatever you want, but it's much harder to get medicine to you and your family in a time of need and a time of crisis. So, if crisis strikes, I want you and your families to be prepared. With the Wellness Company Medical Emergency Kit, you're empowered to take control of your health. The kit includes 8 life-saving medications, including amoxicillin, Z-Pak, ivermectin, for you to keep on hand, along with a guidebook for safe and easy use. So from tick bites to COVID to extreme public health outbreaks, every scenario is covered. Avoid the high costs, avoid the long hospital wait times, especially obviously in a time of emergency, and take control of you and your family's healthcare needs. Like I always say, folks, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So go to twc.health, like the Wellness Company, twc.health/triggered for a 15% discount on the emergency medical kit. That's twc.health/triggered. Get 15% off. Have that in the bank so you're not scrambling when your family needs it most. Okay, guys, joining me now is an all-star America First fighter who's delivering win after win. He's West Virginia gubernatorial candidate, but also current State Attorney General Patrick Morrisey. So, Attorney General Morrisey, first off, talk a little bit about why you decided to run for governor. I mean, what's interesting is, West Virginia, people, it's a small state, it doesn't do that much, but you are actually out there as AG now, challenging the Biden administration and, the insanity that's going on in the DOJ and all of these things, from the state level. What are the biggest issues that you're facing in West Virginia, and what are the top policy priorities that you can do as governor that go beyond what you're doing right now as AG even?
Well, absolutely. And first of all, thank you, Don, for joining today. There's so much going on. I joke that I wake up every day with a big smile on my face because I get to sue the Biden administration. And as you know, our batting average in court has been very, very high. I get together with a number of my colleagues and we file suit as this lawless administration is trying to fundamentally change our country for the worse. And fortunately, as the state AG, we get to bring legal cases together. We go into courts. And as a result of your father's judicial picks, we can get court cases heard in a fair way. And we've been able to score big, big wins, taking on the Biden administration, stopping their energy agenda, which really puts America last. I mean, that's a big deal out in West Virginia when they're trying to get rid of coal and natural gas. And yet they're also moving to have 67% of the people locked in for mandated electric vehicles. It's lunacy at its worst. And as AG, I can do something about it. And Don, one of the reasons I decided to run for governor is I thought we can scale up the work that we're doing in order to really have an incredible impact on our state and our country. So a lot of people know what the AGs do, and they file lawsuits against the Biden administration. But I think when you could bring to bear not only 20, 25 attorneys general, but treasurers, attorneys general, maybe 35 state agencies within each state, and all the governors, you can actually pull a huge amount of support by bringing to bear your legal firepower, your economic might, your policy prowess, your political and PR edge, and you could stop the federal Leviathan. And that's a great thing. I think it's important for our country. And it's especially good when your father gets back in the White House, because you're going to need conservative governors to catch that power that's being devolved back from the federal government to the states. And for those reasons, and to help our state grow, improve our standard of living, drive educational attainment, stop the disaster and the fentanyl crisis at the border, that's why I decided to put my name in the hat for governor. It's going well, but it's been a busy time.
Oh, it's always a busy time. I mean, I think people have to understand, again, as Attorney General, you're fighting the Biden administration on energy, but you've also had major victories, in the opioid, drug cases that haven't received much media attention, but obviously there's been some big developments there. That's one of the, you have 4 or 5 things just on the federal level that you're challenging in a way that people like me, all of my listeners would love to see. You'll never get the credit because, he's the Attorney General from West Virginia, but you're a guy that's actually out there doing so many of the things that conservatives want happen. You're calling them to task. The opioid, obviously, I mean, energy is huge, but the opioid ones, killing people indiscriminately across our country at a level that rivals major wars. What can you tell us what's going on there?
Absolutely. Well, I'm always fond of saying that in West Virginia, we fight just a little bit heavier than our weight class. And so while we may be the 38th largest state, I think we can still pack a punch. And never was that more evident than when we were tackling the opioid epidemic. I know that when I came in, there was barely any in my office to deal with that, but we were methodical, and we've actually worked not only in terms of addressing some of the problems from an educational and prevention perspective, but having accountability, Don, within the pharmaceutical supply channel. So we've initiated a lot of suits, and now I'm proud to tell you, West Virginia is #1 in the country per capita in settlements in. Actually, if you look at aggregate dollars, I think we're 13th or 14th. And once again, when you're the 38th, 37th largest state, when you can be in that position to overperform, it means a lot. But what's even more important than that is making sure that the dollars are going to be used wisely. Yeah. So we actually work with our counties and cities to set up a first of its kind private foundation in the country to make sure that the dollars are not going to be wasted the way a lot of what you saw with the tobacco epidemic. And I'm excited. It can fund law enforcement, it can fund treatment options and education, but also we brought accountability. You can never take back the amount of lives that have been lost, but most certainly people know that West Virginia was as aggressive or more aggressive than any in the country to make sure that we protected our people.
So, and I've seen what you've done, and I've known you for a while now, spent a lot of time with you. Why is it that, you have a lot of conservative, / Republican attorney generals around the country, with the exception of guys like Jeff Landry, now going to be, I guess, governor-elect down in Louisiana, another good friend of ours. Why are so few of them actually willing to fight, let's call it these national battles, or utilize the platform that they have? I mean, if you can do that from West Virginia, what could some of these guys, if they're, in even the bigger states, or perhaps the, let's call it more powerful from an economic standpoint states, accomplish if they were willing to fight the same way as you?
Well, look, I think we do have a number of really solid attorneys general, and we work together all the time. I just know that it's been a passion of mine to take on the swamp and the administrative state. And I can come to you today and say that a lot of the cases we've had, we've actually defeated the swamp, the federal Leviathan. But we partner with a lot of other states. We work with Texas. We've worked with Ohio. We work with Jeff Landry, really good guy down in Louisiana, just got elected governor. So we have been able to partner with a lot of people, and we do it because, look, we bring unique skills to the table. We have a lot of really good lawyers. We take the issue seriously. I think the courts respect the legal product that we put together. But look, I care. I think that our country is in such a disastrous situation because of the Biden administration. And I could be out doing a lot of different things, but I'm all in to protect our country. So I'm motivated. I wake up every day and I think, who am I going to sue today in terms of these Biden agencies? And it's just a mindset that I have. And I'm not going to let any of the media, the political elites, or the left influence what I say. And I think West Virginians love that. And that's why I think our campaign for governor is going so well.
Well, AG Morrisey, you've also, championed and trying to keep my father on the ballot, in some of these things. I mean, it's almost shocking, right? We're seeing just out of control lawfare from the left, on basically every front at this point. I mean, it's actually crazy. Recently, you had that disgraceful ruling out of Colorado to actually take his name off the ballot, even though they're, I guess, interjecting into a federal case that he's not even been found guilty of yet. Can you break down some of the legal issues and mental hurdles that are going on here? How it's so ridiculous?
Well, I think the most important observation is that the left is trying to weaponize every form of government and go after anyone who would assert a position that's against the establishment. And that's what you're seeing, whether you're talking about bar complaints against state attorneys general. That certainly happened to me back after the 2020 elections, and we had to work for over 3 years to push back on that. You're talking about political prosecutions if you dare disagree with the powers that be. And then, of course, it's outrageous. It's not rooted in law. And so that's one of the reasons why, Don, that we've gotten together. I've been partnering with Indiana. We've been co-leading a lot of the efforts, in fact, across the country to keep your father on the ballot, because he deserves to have the right to put his name in the arena like anyone else. And so we've been successful in West Virginia. We've been successful in Michigan. Obviously, Colorado in a 4-3 decision, that goes up to the Supreme Court. But it's inexplicable to me, because this is something that your father's not even being charged with, right? I mean, let's set the stage right. You have all these nonsense allegations out there, but they're not even going after him for this. And yet somehow they want a state court to interpret a federal law, something that has national implications. That's why we've weighed in. I think the arguments we've brought to bear in these states, and what we'll do also at the Supreme Court, we're going to co-lead that effort along with Indiana. The AG, Todd Ricchetti, is another good guy, and he's doing some good work. I think that the Supreme Court, number one, they're going to take it up. Number two, they're going to reverse this. That is my prediction, because this is just another way to engage in election interference and politicize the process, because they can't win on the merits.
Yeah, no, I think that's 100% right. And, I guess, I'd like to ask you, what role do you see for the individual states on major issues like, big tech censorship? I know that's one, and the collusion. I know that's one that Jeff Landry was working on a lot, as well as AG down in Louisiana. If the federal government doesn't act, can the states step in? Do you have the power to make real headway there? I think we all see what's going on, but, honestly, even Republicans in Congress and at the federal level in Washington, D.C., oh, yeah, big tech bad, but they're not actually doing anything while getting trampled. These are the same people that talk about FISA abuses, but vote to keep paying for it. What can the states do there?
I mean, certainly the states can join together and fight back. And usually in cases like this, there's strength in numbers. So I know, for instance, we do a lot for the size of our office, but we can't take on every fight just resource-wise, right? Because you have a limited number of people to bring to bear and limited resources. So in an ideal world, you partner with other states, and then you share the workload with a lot of folks. So we have been able to take on Facebook and take on Google and take on a lot of the big tech companies, because we do think that Twitter and the tech space is the proverbial town square, and people should have the ability to participate without being throttled, or most certainly without having the government try to censor it. What happened for many years, when you have the government reaching in, trying to censor folks and taking the recommendations of big tech, that's outrageous. But I think that what the states can do is they can weigh in. Yes, they can file suits, but they can also be a strong voice. If you get 20 states together talking about consistency in the policy, looking for dramatic revisions to Section 230 of the Communications Act from 1996, which I think has caused a lot of these problems. The more the states talk about it, the more you bring to bear what the states can do. States can't do everything. I, for instance, have limited criminal jurisdiction, right? So a lot of times when people say, hey, there's corruption, you go after the other side, I just am not allowed under the law to do that. But when you get 20, 25 states together on some of these tech issues, I can promise you it gets the tech companies' attention.
Yeah. So I guess one of the other major issues, again, I mean, you're sort of in there a lot. You're dealing with the tech stuff. You're dealing with the election interference, what I call clearly election interference. You got major stuff and victories towards, the opioid, crisis. But another one you've gotten involved in a lot as of late would be the world of sports and the NCAA regarding transfer rules. What's the issue there? Obviously, there's been a lot of changes in what student athletes can do. But what's the issue that you're focused on there, as it seems to be getting a lot more attention, these days with guys like you doing what you're doing there?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really interesting, Don. A couple months ago, I was made aware that one of the athletes who transferred over to West Virginia, that he was applying to the NCAA for a waiver for the transfer eligibility rules. And he was a two-time transfer, and they wanted him to sit for a year. But based upon some of the rules that the NCAA had, the athlete thought that he could play now and that it made a lot of sense. And I looked at it. I agreed with him. Raekwon Battle's lawyer looked at it. He agreed with that. And so I wrote a letter into the NCAA, and we asked nicely. We said, hey, listen, these are arbitrary rules. Why are you allowing it for a kid that may go to Duke or North Carolina or Kentucky, but you're not going to allow it for someone who goes to WVU? So we thought that there were real problems with that. And so we stepped up, and they blew off the letters. And then we had a conversation with the NCAA. And finally, I was able to talk to them. I said, look, I'm going to file a lawsuit against you. And then I worked with Ohio and a 7-state AG coalition, and we sued the NCAA. Quite frankly, they were wildly inconsistent with how they were interpreting these transfer eligibility rules. And we thought that they were violating the antitrust laws, the competition rules. And the NCAA is not immune from the rule of law, and they have to comply with the law. So we were able to file in the Northern District of West Virginia, and there are a couple guys, Raekwon Battle, just a great player, and Noah Farrakhan. As a result of the lawsuit, they're now eligible. And in fact, we got a temporary restraining order against the NCAA, extend to a preliminary injunction. Now, for the rest of the winter season, 2 of WVU's starters are able to play because we were able to overcome this arbitrary organization that thought it knew better for the student athletes. And now the case will really move forward in an aggressive way. But it just shows you what a good state and an AG can do if you're pushing and you're willing to not just accept what people suggest from on high.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. I mean, the NCAA, another one of those disaster organizations that seems to, they know everything, they tell you everything, but like we're not exactly sure exactly what they actually even really do, other than they had a monopoly over, the student athletes for so long. So that, the changes are interesting, but you're right. I imagine there are certain athletes that would get a lot of precedent and a lot of attention, and a lot of the rules will always bend well for them. But there are others that would be left out in that process, which seems to go pretty well with all of academia these days.
Oh, look, it's a disaster. And Don, you know this better than I do. The left has been spending a tremendous amount of time for decades trying to undercut all the civic institutions that give rise, that serve as the netting that uphold our Constitution, our foundation document. They're going after the churches. They're going after civic associations and the schools with their far left, their woke agenda. And it is up to states and AGs to push back aggressively in the arena, because you can make a difference, not just through the litigation, but when 20 or 25 states get together and use their economic power against the feds or some of these crazy policies, I can promise you that can carry a mean punch.
So, talk about some of those the skills, the successes you've had as Attorney General in West Virginia, and how you think that ultimately translates into being governor, and where you can take it from there.
Absolutely. Well, I think many people watching may have heard of some of the cases that we've brought and that I've led on. One of the more famous is West Virginia v. EPA, where we led the national coalition to stop Biden's Green New Deal. And that was a really big issue for West Virginia, because not only are they trying to put coal-fired power plants out of commission, costing us all those jobs, they want to ruin it for natural gas. So there's an obvious jobs perspective that motivated me to go in. But I will tell you, probably the biggest impact of that case was a big win against the swamp. The swamp literally invades every aspect of people's lives, and folks don't even know it, because you have federal government that's grown larger and larger and larger, in part because courts kept allowing these agencies have deference, to continually use their regulatory powers in a way that's inconsistent with Congress's direction and the Constitution. So I've been working really hard to push back on all that, thinking that as we start to narrow the swamp and blow it up and reduce it, that provides more powers to the states and to the people, more freedom, more innovation, more economic opportunity. So that's a big part of what's motivated me. But we've had huge wins. West Virginia EPA, the Waters United States rule, people have heard about that. They try to call your backyard ditch, your ephemeral stream, like a federal navigable waterway.
Yeah. You can't mow your lawn because there's 3 drops of water under a sprinkler and there's a amoeba that lives there.
It's crazy. And then obviously we know that the gender issues that are arising with respect to the efforts that males are putting, that you have for males trying to play sports with women. We've been out in front defending that. We think that women should have the ability to play sports on their own. So when you have all these issues, and some of them deal directly with jobs, protecting West Virginia jobs, we've supported educational attainment policy, school choice, very aggressive school choice policy in West Virginia. So when you put all this together, it shows, hey, these are the kind of skills that you'd like to see in your next governor, because you want a governor to stand up to Washington and protect your citizens from what's coming your way. You want a governor to stand up to make sure that the jobs are in place. You want a governor to make sure that we're going to advance educational attainment. And you most certainly want a governor who's going to push back against the wokeism and the crazy agenda on the left. And there's just no one else running in this campaign who has that kind of background and record. Unlike everyone else, they promise to do different things. You know, we've been there, we've done that. We've led the cases, we build these large, and we go to court, and look, 70-80% of the time we win. So we have a heck of a good batting average. And I think that's great experience to serve as West Virginia's next governor. And that's what helped motivate me to run.
You know, so what are the biggest issues, you know, that you've been dealing with that make you that better candidate, you know, for the West Virginia governor's race? What are the ones that seem to be resonating most with the people, and what are the other ones that you'd be pursuing in the meantime that, you know, sort of, you know, as these things grow and as the playing field changes, what else do you see on the horizon there?
Absolutely. One of the biggest issues in West Virginia is not going to be a surprise to you. Bidenomics is an unmitigated disaster. And, you know, whenever you have massive inflation, you have a poor state like West Virginia, it really impacts our people negatively. And look, you know this, Don, West Virginians love President Trump, and there's always been a phenomenal relationship. Well, you know, Joe Biden and his policies have really put a hurting to the West Virginia economy and our citizens. And so that's an important goal for anyone who's going to serve as governor. And part of that, of course, is protecting America's energy independence. West Virginia is a strong state in terms of our coal resources, natural gas. And so when you're the 4th or 5th largest energy producer in the nation, you actually have a big asset. And Biden has gone after our fossil fuels, and it's terribly problematic. That's one thing that we have to make sure that we keep doing. I've done that in the AG spot. We're going to have to do that in the governor's position as well, because West Virginia could build on the leverage of those energy resources to grow. The other thing which West Virginia really needs to do is we're going to have to grow our workforce. Right now, West Virginia has the lowest workforce participation rates in the nation. But I know that through the right policies, we can grow and fill a lot of the unopened jobs that are out there, talking about the beauty of our state and that we're beginning to change economically, making real progress as a state compared to what you saw 10 or 15 years ago. So there's a lot of good stuff that we're doing that translates from the AG world to governor. And I could go on and on. We could talk about the drug fight, not only the fight against opioid abuse, but now the fentanyl menace coming in from China. We've been leading the way, trying to call fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction as governor. My voice is going to be a lot louder on that. And ideally, when President Trump is our next president, we'll have the ability to work together to have the kind of policies that are really going to let West Virginia soar. I'm fond of saying, Don, that West Virginia should be that shining state in the mountains. And under my policies, I think they will.
Well, I think so too, my friend. I think so too. Patrick, where can people find out about your campaign for governor of West Virginia? Read more about what you've done as a state AG, Attorney General, so that they can check it out and support these things. You know, again, now it's trying to highlight the two true candidates for this 2024 race that are actually, you know, America First fighters. I just want to make sure everyone has the resources to be able to figure that out and find out everything they need to know.
Absolutely. So people can go online to patrickmorrisey.com. That's 2 R's and 1 S. And you can look and see all my positions on the issues. And importantly, you also know that I was the first and for a long time, the only candidate to endorse President Trump. I think there were others that started to look at the polls 6 months later. I've been there from the very beginning.
It's funny how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, look, I know I had developed a good working relationship with you and with President Trump, serving as Attorney General, and you guys came in a lot for me in my race in 2018. So I've always been very grateful. President Trump has treated West Virginia well, and I didn't want there to be any hesitation at all. Look, other people, they like to let the political winds go. That's not my style. But people could go to patrickmorrisey.com. And look, if you want to donate $5, $10, $25, help a little bit. I have a lot of the establishment in the far left that's going to come after me. We've got a really solid lead in this primary. I think the last few polls at 10 and 12 and 16 points up against a big establishment, a real liberal guy, this more Capito guy that's running. And I think we're well positioned, but we need to keep getting stronger because, you know, these guys can just find millions of dollars underneath the seat cushions. And
it ain't going to be from West Virginia, my friend. It's going to be from like the opposite of West Virginia, wherever that money comes from. But it's real and it's something we have to contend with.
That's right. And look, the good news is I think people know my record. They know that I've stood strong with President Trump. It makes a big difference. And they know what I'm going to do as the state's next governor. So things are going well, but I won't take it for granted because we have a unique opportunity to do incredible things for West Virginia when I serve as governor and President Trump is back in the White House, because quite frankly, West Virginia is going to be able to lead and catch a lot of those initiatives that President Trump is leading at, and we're going to work together as an ally. Can you imagine having coalitions of states and governors supporting what President Trump wants to do? You didn't really see that as much last time.
They did a lot without a lot of support, including from the rhinos. Imagine what you had if people actually got it and they were in sync and, you know, understood what it meant for everyone. There's no question you could do a lot more.
Absolutely. No, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm eager to continue to work. Let's make sure President Trump is on the ballot. We've got a big Supreme Court case coming up that, as I mentioned, the Indiana AG and myself, we're working on with a lot of the AGs. Most of them joined. I think it's terrific. This shouldn't be a hard call because this is just about basic fairness and getting people on the ballot.
Yeah. Well, no, 100%. I appreciate all your help there, Patrick. Thank you, guys. Make sure you check out Patrick Morrisey and what he's done for West Virginia, as well as how he's running for governor there right now. Definitely one of the races we got to be watching and participating. So, Patrick, thank you so much for everything, as always. Great seeing you. Hope you guys had an amazing Christmas and New Year. And we got a long year ahead of us, but we got to win.
Hey, same to you. And come back out to West Virginia soon. We miss you. We know you love the state and want to see you as much as you can.
I'll be there, my friend. Thanks a lot.
Hey, thanks so much.
Okay, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I think that was great. I think it's important to highlight, some of the people that will be doing this, right? I see it every day. There are those, I took a picture, a selfie with Donald Trump once. I'm the Trump endorsed candidate or whatever it may be. It's really important we figure out exactly who is what. And how they do this. Make sure you're also checking out the show. If you get your podcasts on Spotify or iTunes podcasts, you can get it there. That way, if you're traveling, if you're on the road, you can see it that way or listen to it that way. So you're not missing any of these episodes. Just make sure you're liking, sharing, and subscribing, guys. That's the way we beat the algorithm. That's the way we beat big tech and all of those guys. So just do that. It's simple. It's easy. It doesn't take you anything to do it, but that's how we get out there and win. And we also want to make sure you check out our great sponsors. Check out the folks over at Goldco. If you're concerned about what's going on with interest rates and inflation and reckless spending and Biden-caused disasters, we want to make sure you're prepared for all of that. So owning tangible, physical, inflation hedging gold and silver can stabilize and secure your portfolio. Goldco. They've got top-notch customer service. They'll walk you through each of the processes. They'll take you through it step by step, and you can learn more because it's about educating yourself. Learn more at donjuniorgold.com. That's DONJRgold.com. Very simple. DONJRGOLD.com. Learn more, listen to them, and also, guys, check out one of our newest sponsors, The Wellness Company. They're a leading provider in emergency medical kits, and with 90% of our pharmaceuticals being made outside of the U.S., we just want to make sure you have what your family needs when the next crisis inevitably hits. We saw it with COVID and supply chain chaos and lockdowns and Fauci failures. It can be hard to find what you need in a time of crisis. So when the crisis strikes, I just want you to be prepared. With the Wellness Company's emergency medical kit, you're empowered to take control of your health. The kit includes 8 life-saving medications, including amoxicillin, Z-Pak, ivermectin to keep on hand, and a guidebook to learn how to use it. So whether it's a tick bite, COVID, extreme health outbreaks, every scenario is covered. So avoid the high cost, the long hospital waits, long lines. Take control of your family health needs. And again, it's always better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So go to TWC, the Wellness Company, twc.health/triggered for 15% discount on the emergency medical kit. That's twc.health/triggered. Take control. Make sure you have what you need if the inevitable feels like the inevitable at this point with the decisions that are being made happen. So check it out. Appreciate you guys, and we will see you